Okay, next up, meeting number 3 of the work session. Call the meeting to order, and I think we can dispense with the silent prayer and the pledge. So Tara, if you'll call the roll.
Alan Ward.
Here.
Kathy Cox.
Here.
Nicole Cohen.
Here.
Pat Rooney.
Here.
John Maston.
Here. I'll need a motion to review and accept the agenda for this session.
I'll make a motion to review and accept this.
A second.
Terry?
Kathy Cox.
Yes.
Pat Rooney.
Yes.
Alan Ward.
Yes.
Nicole Cohen.
Yes.
John Maston.
Yes. Time to review and discuss. Superintendent Asaya.
Thank you. President Maston, members of the board, the first item on this work session is to discuss the definitions from our mission statement. As you have in front of you, I believe, a packet that looks like what you see on the screen at the top there. And this came as a result of our work with the curriculum committee, the board subcommittee, and working with our mission statement and with coming up with a curriculum philosophy statement. We realized that there were terms within our mission statement that were subject to interpretation, and based on an individual's interpretation, that may not be necessarily the same intention that the board had when identifying this as our mission statement. And so while the curriculum committee did provide suggestions for definitions of these terms, we did ask them to understand that this is the board's mission statement, and it is the board's responsibility to identify the definition for these terms. We did include in the curriculum philosophy statement the definition for critical thinking, I believe it was, that we had included there. And so the actual highlighted items on the screen are those, how do we in fact determine or define for ourselves what is scholarship, what is character, what is humanity. And then when we talk about a responsible citizen, what does that look like? When we talk about a contributing member of society, what does that look like? And so we have, starting on, and if you don't mind, I'm going to walk you through the document first and then we'll go back to it. Starting where it says LHUSD number 1 philosophy definitions, these were suggested definitions that were provided, talking about scholarship, character, and humanity. Then on the next page is a suggestion for responsible citizen. And then you see rights, responsibilities, and liberty defined here. And that was submitted, and when we get to the end of that, I'll ask that individual to explain. Then on the next page, you'll see contributing members of society recognize all of the above. So that is the conclusion of that set that was submitted. Then underneath the line it says from the curriculum committee. So what I did was I collected all of the definitions that the curriculum committee submitted, and these were things that we had put out and had been submitted previously. And so what you see are hash marks underneath. When we talked about responsible citizen, there were 5 people who agreed that that was a good definition, and then below that was another one. You can see that they've broken it out. There was, on the next page, there's a whole series of bullets, and there's a word added to one of those bullets that was suggested. Then you'll see that there are some additional definitions. Then when we move to the last page, contributing member of society, there were some suggested definitions there. And this was all one block on contributing member. And so one person on contributing member said that this is good, but it needs to be condensed. Another one wanted rephrasing. 2 said as is, and one of them had an addition. So this is the feedback that we received from the curriculum committee, as well as this first submission of philosophy definitions, which came from Mrs. Cohen. So what I would like to do is ask Mrs. Cohen to go through what she submitted so that the board can understand that, and then let's talk about what the board would see as our definitions.
Okay. So, and I handed it out again because it's a separate document, and I had Terry hand it out to everybody. And you can see where it comes from. But I really thought that it was important that we stick with the original intent of scholarship, character, humanity, and what a responsible citizen or contributing member of society, what it means in the context of our Constitution, almost like original intent. Because all these meanings have changed. When we look up the meanings of anything that we're about to talk or discuss, if we look up the original meaning from the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, it's vastly different than from the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary today. And, excuse me, so I submitted the liberty because I feel like that's the most important thing that we teach our children. And I've never seen anything so succinct as this one sheet that Dr. Marlene McMillan put together, defining liberty and freedom. I think those two terms are often seen as almost meaning the same, and they're not. And I know that we use the word democracy a lot in our culture and in our society and even within our school system. But I think these are all important pieces of the scholarship part to understand, to truly understand what the meaning of these words mean in the context of our Constitution, and especially in the preamble to the Declaration, where it talks about liberty specifically and our unalienable rights. So obviously I feel very passionate about this because I feel like everything that is wrong, whether it's in our content of what we're teaching, whether it's the character education, whether it's our funding, our legislators, our families, whatever it is I feel like we've gotten so far away from what we were supposed to be teaching that nobody really understands it. So that's why I feel like these definitions are really important, especially in light of our committee meeting where there was disagreement about what things meant. So anyways, I don't know if I answered that or explained why.
Yes, thank you. And from the curriculum committee, we did not address the scholarship, character, and humanity. We just did the
Right.
responsible citizens and contributing members of society.
Right.
Because that was ended up in the curriculum statement as
Right.
well originally. And so they had some suggested definitions for that. So that's what we have before us. Any thoughts or comments before we get started?
Let's dig in.
You have a person who had their hand raised in the back.
Yes.
I'm sorry. From what you're reading, Nicole, is that different than what I see on the screen?
No, but I have a spare copy if you want one
Awesome.
just for you.
Thank you.
We did rephrase in the packet that you have, we did rephrase from Dr. McMillan's original definition for democracy.
That may be. That would fit either.
What was the original?
Majority rule, no representation
Mob
for
rule,
minority
okay.
groups versus
That's-
mob rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rules in a way, I'm just saying what's for dinner.
So if you want to get to it, my suggestion would be that we start with what we have for scholarship, character, and humanity and talk about those as the beginning point. Put this up so you guys can see that since it's not.
I can read that.
Will these appear as an addendum to the mission statement? If so, where will these show up?
I think that's a good question. I think it would, you know how we have the longer piece that had all of our different
Principles.
That would be in there. The board defines these as would be a part of that document.
Maybe a link rather than a list of a link under the
Actually,
mission
having the
statement.
words be a hot link on our website would be
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be great. So are we going to discuss scholarship?
Yeah, let's start with scholarship. Since I can't put them all three on the screen, we might as well
Right.
just do one at a time.
You want me to do that for you?
That's okay.
Okay.
I think last time we did it, we were sitting a little differently, but
Yeah. And the definition that we have in our packet for scholarship came from Nicole. Okay.
See, now that was a very unfair question to ask.
I'm sorry. I'm not
and you
Doesn't
have this
impact
from
me
your
at all.
dictionaries that you
Yes,
have different
it is from actually, I believe, well, at least in part, sure. So is there any part of the definition that anybody has a problem with? Maybe that's a good place to start.
I don't like the length of it. I like my definitions to be short. I think that having a definition that somebody can glance at and grasp an understanding of is important. So if I look up scholarship, it says learning, semicolon, attainments in science or literature as a man of great scholarship, which I think is our intended use here. And I think if we took that from the 1828 Webster's and we changed out learning attainments in education, or in listing a set of core subject matter, that may be a better, more compact use of what I think we're trying to communicate,
Well-
at least in my vision.
Well, I think that scholarship is based on our mission statement. Scholarship is supposed to encompass what it is that we are actually teaching in our schools. So I don't know that that's a one-liner. Not that it has to be these, but I don't know that it's a one-liner. We already have the brevity in our mission statement. I don't know that the definition needs to be shortened because
What is, I look at that last sentence, it overrules the handicap of environment, poverty, and individual physical handicap. Well, why are we, in other words, let's say what we mean, let's make it clear and concise, and what does that have to do with scholarship?
I'll tell you what it has to do.
Tell me.
We are currently indoctrinating our children in social justice, which we are constantly making an issue of handicap, our environment, kids that are coming from a poverty situation, that we're making an issue out of race constantly, about gender, about color. We are doing that constantly in education, and what this is saying is that scholarship overrules all that. when you are learning truth, when you are actually being educated, it is for everybody, and it overrules that. That actually, I believe, comes from Hillsdale College, to be honest. So that's fine if we don't want to say that.
Are we doing all of those things here in Lake Havasu?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have only one problem, and it says desire for education is perhaps the greatest force. I won't concur with that. It's not the desire for education, it's the education that is the greatest force. All of us can remember taking courses in school where the teacher beat us to death to make us learn. But once we learned, we had a different perspective on where we were going next. So we develop a desire through our learning. We rarely learn through desire. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if we want to word it that way. I'm just trying to say, I think we've got the cart and the horse backwards.
You're saying education is the greatest force in the determination of individual character.
Well, if it was me, I'd just take desire for out of it and just say education is perhaps the greatest force. That's just me.
Mr. Madsen, you had a suggestion earlier, and I couldn't hear it.
I was looking for a discussion on more brevity to this, but it sounds like we're making a case to keep it all in, so I'll withhold it.
Well, don't think I'm saying keep it in there just because I said change that word.
I want to hear more discussion.
Who says education is the greatest force in the determination of individual character? Who says that?
I said it is perhaps.
Okay, well, I mean, there are other things. I thought we were looking at scholarship. Now we're looking at character. I just think you focus on what the focus is. If you're looking at scholarship, that's one thing. And then and all of a sudden now we say it overrules the handicaps of the environment. If you state what you believe it is, you know, I just think you clearly say what you think scholarship is. Now, if you want to get into character and all that other stuff, wait until you get to the next set of things. But to say that education is perhaps the greatest determination of individual character, hey, all I have to do is look at the news and you see some of these people have no idea of what character is. And they've got the best education in the world.
No, they've got the best diploma in the world.
Well,
They don't
Yeah,
have the best
there's a big
education.
difference in
Yeah.
education. Education is not just about formal education. We are all afforded the opportunity in this country to educate ourselves.
I would say in my own case growing up, the thing that helped me with a lot of character were my religious beliefs, the family values, and all that.
But you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
learn those, right? Don't you?
I didn't have to learn them in school.
Okay, well,
I have a problem with the definitions being longer than the mission statement.
The modern definition of scholarship from dictionary.com is learning, semicolon, knowledge acquired by study, the academic attainments of a scholar.
okay, that doesn't really tell me anything.
I think that first sentence
I think,
tells me what it is.
I think we have to tell people, and when I read scholarship, character, and humanity, I look at this and I say, scholarship is, you're a good student, you're learning what we're teaching. Character
But
is
that's not scholarship. Learning what somebody's teaching you isn't scholarship.
What is scholarship then?
Well, according to what I believe, it's right there in front of you. But
But a lot of this.
But being a good, obedient student isn't scholarship.
Well, being a good obedient student is not scholarship. And when I just read it said that there was learning involved. But you get to character and you get to humanity. If there's something wrong with what's going on in the classroom, the character and humanity parts are what you're going to use to pick that up. When you start talking about overcoming deficits, physical handicaps, as a for instance, which I've got a young lady in my house who has both physical and mental handicaps. That says more about your character and your perseverance than it does about your scholarship, in my mind. I just look at it that your character gets you over those hurdles that people throw in your way. Your knowledge set will help, but your knowledge set is not the same thing as your character.
So, are you suggesting that this sentence here go under character?
I would move it down there until we get to character. I think that in my view, is a better fit for that sentence.
But haven't we all been told forever that education is the great equalizer? That's what the opportunity to have an education is what allows people to overcome all those things listed in the last sentence.
Maybe.
Those very things that we are now singling out in our education and in our culture. I mean, Dawkins just passed away. And it was scholarship that allowed him to overcome or persevere, right? His desire, even though I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I'm just saying.
I don't agree with Hawking either on a lot of things in the realm of physics.
But I'm just
At some
saying,
level.
it was education and scholarship that allowed him to overcome.
I understand what you're saying. He's a highly educated man. Professor Emeritus at Oxford is a great title to have. He accomplished a great deal in his career. But was it the desire to learn that forced him to overcome, or was it a perseverance based on the injuries he received in his life that pushed him to that end? Was it his character that did it, or was it his education? Or was it a little bit of each coming together to make the final product of the man that we all knew? Yes, ma'am.
Can we contribute?
Absolutely.
Okay. The second sentence that starts with education, I think that whole portion is more of a rationale. It's the reason why we are here. It's the reason for all these definitions and for the mission statement itself. So as far as a definition to the word scholarship, I agree. I don't know if that belongs there. I think it belongs somewhere else. And I think Cole's trying to say, this is the reason why we're here, and this is the definition of education. And yes, you could use it to back up any of your beliefs, but as far as just a definition, if you wanted to just define scholarship, I think you should stick with the top portion.
Can I make a comment? Just as well, I asked for permission first.
Right.
In looking at the document, it says LHUSD's philosophy definitions. And as I was sitting here and listening, there's a difference between the definition of a word versus the definition, defining one's philosophy. So I think that's why the definition, a philosophical or philosophy definition, is going to be a little bit more lengthy, because you're trying to articulate the philosophy of LHUSD when it comes to the word scholarship, and kind of going to Joanne's point, you can define scholarship very quickly in one sentence if you just define the word. But if you're trying to articulate one's philosophy on that word, you're going to bring in a little bit more, some detail to actually help you define that word based on your philosophy. So I think that's where
Thank you.
trying to simplify it to just a sentence, that will do the defining of the word scholarship. I mean, that'll take care of that. But if you're going to articulate your philosophy as a LHUSD governing board or the district, then you're going to probably need a little bit more, some more detail there to help you articulate that philosophy.
And I'm fine rearranging whatever, or I'm fine with it. I realize not everybody has spent the same amount of time looking into this that I have, so I'm a little hypersensitive, so you'll just have to roll with that.
Is it necessary to have the word philosophy? Can you just put,
Well,
come up with a different word?
Well, it is a philosophy. I mean, there are different philosophies that are coming through our schools.
No, I know that, but I thought these definitions were supposed to be honing in on the mission statement vocabulary. So just to define the vocabulary. So I don't know if I'm understanding.
Well, I think that he just explained why it's important to have philosophy, because it's not just a definition, because otherwise people are going to just read the definition and they're going to say, well, that's not the definition when I look up scholarship, so it kind of explains why.
Okay. I didn't know that's the path that we were taking.
Because
down.
it's part of the mission statement, which is a philosophy,
Okay.
I think.
And you're saying, what does the district mean by
Right.
scholarship in the context of that mission statement?
Well, I think mission statements, aren't they part of a definition of your expressing your philosophy?
Correct.
Even though it's in the form of a mission statement, that's what you're doing.
And now you're just clarifying certain words within that mission statement to bring a little bit more context into the picture.
Well, we've spent 30 minutes on the word scholarship, and I'm concerned about being able to get through this document. We'll be here maybe 9 or 10 tonight. I don't think anyone wants to do that. Maybe a group of 2 board members could hash this out and present it back to us. But this is not going to work, I don't think.
Well, we spent 8 hours hashing it out with a group, almost 8 hours, 2 4-hour meetings almost,
For the mission statement?
for the curriculum committee.
For the curriculum committee, but not on the definitions. Did we 8 hours coming up with these definitions?
Well, yes.
I don't think a committee of 5 people, meaning the school board, I just don't think this is going to be productive. There has to be another way to go about resolving this.
Well, I guess one of the ways would have been to maybe come with some suggestions.
I mean, to make it easy, I move that we accept these definitions.
Well, we can't move it for a work session.
Oh, that's right. Well, I'll withdraw my motion.
I think, we've got a curriculum committee to give us advice. That's what we formed it for. The curriculum committee is there to give us advice, to tell us what they think we need. And I think the best way to proceed is to look at this and see if we have areas we disagree with. Voice our opinions. Let the curriculum committee look at what we feel we disagree with, and whatever they come back with, we accept.
No, this is us. This is our board mission statement. The curriculum committee struggled with what these words meant, which is why it's coming back to the board to define what these words mean.
Well, there was talk that people wish that they had, employees wish that they had been able to take part in the board's mission statement because they felt they had a hard time coming up with the curriculum mission statement because they hadn't had input into
What?
the boards. Yes, I've heard feedback, but that's why that was so
That's-
difficult for the
Well,
curriculum committee. to
that's
do.
funny because Diana sent it out to everybody and she provided every bit of, and asked for feedback
I
on our.
understand, I
Well-
understand that. But we didn't, I don't remember when we wrote this mission statement, I don't remember that we invited people at that point. It was only after. I thought we had our first meeting over at the college.
We actually sent this out to the entire staff
After we wrote it.
after we wrote it
Right,
and said
after we wrote it.
we were open to your input.
I
It was
understand.
after we wrote it, but before we voted on it.
I know,
We-
but that's not the same as starting from the beginning, like when we were over at the college. It's just a totally different process. It's one way to do it, but people are saying that they wish that they had had a chance to be there from the genesis of the writing, not looking at it after it was written and making suggestions.
Except it's not really everybody's responsibility to come up with the
I'm just
direction.
telling you why people felt they had a hard time with the curriculum philosophy.
Well,
Well, I think that's a bogus excuse a year later, because everybody was invited to participate, and everybody was encouraged to send their suggestions. And there were some suggestions sent.
there were some
and-
suggestions incorporated.
And there was some suggestions
I know that.
incorporated, and there was an overwhelming,
Well, it's neither here nor there, because this is what we've got, we voted on it, and now we have to proceed. So are we really going to stay here tonight and go through this whole document?
so on one hand, you're talking about how we should start the process over from, we should have had a much
No.
longer process, but this
No,
process
no.
is too long.
I will make the motion at the next board meeting. I move to approve this as submitted. I would rather do that than go over this very tedious process. We will not get out of here but until 10 o'clock tonight, if then, and we may not be through with it then.
Well, like I said, I think we can get out of here rather quickly. If we look at this, and we know it's acceptable to some people, and we say, I don't like this.
Right. I agree.
I mean, I'll give you an example under character. There's a whole list of things there. I can accept any of them, with the exception of the first one under 7 through 12. I don't think care in choosing your occupation has anything to do with your character. That's a choice you make. So that has nothing to do with developing character. Scratch it. Go on to humanity, then go to the next one, next one. Each time somebody sees something like that, bring it up. And if we don't get into a heated argument, go on to the next one.
Okay, I agree with you on care and choice of occupation. The rest of it's fine. And we've got to find a way to get through this. But does anyone object to what's already there about scholarship? And I will take it as it is, regardless whether it's perfect or not. It's all right with me. Such
So
as
on
finish up
scholarship,
scholarship.
the suggestion was to add perseverance, so logic, reason, and perseverance.
Well, no, because
That's-
perseverance was a
that's a
character
character
trait.
Character, I'm sorry, okay, I missed that.
Is there anyone here who cannot accept scholarship as it is presently written?
I think that when we start off character, I think that we take that last section, which did start out, at least in what I have, as desire for education is perhaps the greatest force in the determination of individual character. I think that's the way that you start off character. I think simply moving that down into character as a whole, unedited, and then having the second part of character be we judge good moral character of each individual. I think if you do that, I think that makes absolute sense.
It's fine with me.
Just looking at it, this is what it would look like.
I'll live with it. I still don't like the desire for, but I'll live with it.
In regards to character?
Even under character, a desire for, education in and of itself is the greatest force in determination.
Then let's remove desire for. I don't have a problem with that.
I don't know. I mean, desire for education, remember, there's a big difference between education and schooling. What we do here is schooling. And just like in that book that I passed out, that I hope everybody at least read the foreword, at least that's in this room, sitting behind this dais, you know, an education, you have to go out and get yourself. Nobody can give that to you. No teacher can give that to you. It's something you have to want for yourself. A schooling is what you can get in school. So there has to be a desire of people that want to work towards good.
But we have the cart and the horse here, and I tell my freshman students that you will enjoy education the more you do it. That, you know, your desire is developed many times through the education you've already gotten. Many times you have to educate yourself. You don't desire to do it, you're forced to do it. Or you have to do it for a job, or you have to do it for another reason. But once you've developed the habit of educating yourself, you begin to have fun doing it. It becomes an enjoyable experience.
And there's a desire there.
Yeah, that's when the desire shows up.
But anyone under 16 has to be in school. There isn't a choice. So it's not a desire for the education. They have to get an
Okay,
education.
but let's change the word. Instead of desire, let's use pursuit of education.
Yeah, that's good.
Fine.
And should that come underneath, we judge the good moral character of each individual? Should that
I think so.
I think that whole sentence ought to follow that. In other words, you know, we're saying that education plays a factor in that. Where I,
Then let's move it down.
It's good for me.
I agree. Flip down.
Make that the second paragraph instead of the first paragraph, Diane. I was being sarcastic. Yeah, do away with that sentence. I think 3 or 4 of us agreed that care is
This
your
was
choice.
from the older dictionary, and when they say care in your choice of occupation, meaning how you occupy your time, not your job.
But nobody will understand that.
Nobody will understand that.
All of these are old. Everything in here is older, so none of it is new.
you say older, not older.
1820s.
Biblical.
That's,
I have no problem with the rest of that.
I'm just kidding. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Have it, huh?
It is.
I know. Can you define, whoever, maybe Nicole, what you mean by thrift to ensure advancement and prosperity?
Sure. Thrift is saving, being thrifty with your money to ensure your advancement and your own prosperity. We're not teaching that. Everything is excess in our culture, in our society. It's, satisfaction now, pay later mentality.
$1,000 phone, you can
Yeah.
buy it on payments.
I know, I get that. And I agree. I don't know if I would know with that.
Right, and that's why I just said, all these are old. It's not, they can't be reworded for, it's just, I was just typing.
The ability to delay gratification.
yeah,
There you go.
I think that would be a better statement.
Yeah.
Ability to it.
Delayed
To
grad.
delay gratification.
Avoidance of immediate gratification. Right?
I like ability better than
Okay,
avoidance.
ability. Okay, go ahead.
This one might
Put it
change
in
from
there.
thrift to ability?
No, just the whole thing
The whole
is
thing
changed
would be
to ability to delay gratification.
That's good.
I stuck in here, care in your daily conduct,
I think that's good.
because that's one of the things that I think we're talking about in character, and that's what the other one actually meant.
Yes.
Yep.
Couldn't it be in both? Shouldn't K6 be taking care in their daily conduct as well?
I think we actually have to develop a list of
Oh, okay.
moral traits, character traits here that we haven't, this is not the
Oh,
one.
okay. Just so.
Yeah, okay.
Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly.
Perseverance, something you mentioned.
Which we have our character ed curriculum, so we might need to pull them from the curriculum itself. We've got 9 character traits that we teach. The PBIS traits that are.
Thank you for clarifying PBIS traits.
Yeah, I was just going to say which character education.
Sorry.
TBIS.
She saw my blank look.
She did.
Actually, I
She
saw,
clarified.
no, I felt it actually.
I felt it.
Yeah, great spot.
Go back to the Boy Scout handbook too. I just rattled them off and Mike's like, yeah, I got that on my wall. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient,
Exactly.
thrifty, cheerful.
That's the list.
Yep,
Humanity?
I liked humanity. Years later, Mike, it's still good.
Are we live?
No, we're on delay.
So where are we?
Humanity, I liked it.
Uh-huh.
Any changes?
Okay, we may move on.
No changes, we'll go to responsible citizen.
All right.
Humanity is good then? Okay, responsible citizen?
I like the last line quite a bit.
Which one are you on?
Responsible citizen.
Yeah, no problem with that.
Any changes to that one?
Now, the word rights doesn't seem to be in the mission statement, so are we just adding 2 new words to define rights and responsibilities?
No, I only included rights and responsibilities because when we're talking about citizenship, we're often talking about our rights as citizens. So I was just trying to make it clear what our rights and responsibilities were so that when we were addressing the responsible citizenship, that we had that at our fingertips, that's all.
Background material.
Not that it had to be included, but just
All right.
as background.
Okay, under rights, the first one, I feel it should be freedom to responsibly express yourself. You know, you don't have a right to yell fire in a crowded building. You have a right to free speech, but it has to be responsible free speech.
Actions have consequences. Speech has consequences. You can say it, but you're going to have a consequence.
That's the only one that doesn't start with right. Does that bother anybody, Dr. Harlow?
Well,
No.
we were
Why don't
talking
we-
about not actually including rights and responsibilities.
No, in this list, they all say the right to this, the right to.
Just put right in place of freedom.
It's the right to responsibly express yourself.
Yes, I agree with you on the parallelism.
I believe that I pulled the rights straight from the .gov website.
No, I'd just get rid of freedom and put right to responsibly express yourself.
Well,
So
again, I don't think, we're not including
No,
this.
this is background
This
material.
was just so that we had the rights and responsibilities in front of us as we were defining responsible
Rights,
citizens.
responsibilities, liberties, all background material,
Right.
all reference points that you can look to.
Okay, so these wouldn't necessarily be included.
Oh,
in our
these are not
No.
going to be there?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay, okay,
Not in the event,
I see.
just there.
but they're there for the last two definitions, which were responsible citizen and contributing members of society.
Okay, but, so this is not in here?
No.
Okay, good.
So I'm just going to highlight those to remove that.
All right.
Just, I guess we're just gonna drop those, but if we're not, we're gonna have them in some document someplace. Then the one that says pay income and other taxes honestly and on time to federal, state, and local authorities, I think I'd change that to meet all obligations to the state or all obligations to the government and leave it like that.
Yeah,
Just meet your obligations to the government.
That's fine.
that sounds good.
And I would add vote.
Yeah. And submit to the draft.
There is no draft.
Well, there will be down the line.
Liberty.
Here's the old band uniforms, by the way,
No one's
the old ones.
That's
Government
ugly
instead of
gold.
authorities.
I hated that gold.
Is that right?
So,
Obligations.
So in the next section is the definitions of liberty. I know this was an important point, was the idea that contributing members of society recognize all of the above. So
Right.
was this intended to be included then?
Well, it's intended to be part of the discussion for sure, because this is, one of the fundamental flaws in my mind. When our kids graduate, they don't understand liberty, what it truly means. We say it in the pledge every day, but I don't know that we're really focused on how quickly we're losing it. I mean, I can name a few instances where there's examples of, loss of our liberties over decisions as a local school board just today, having to do with the band conversation, having to do with, travel, it's just constant, and that's why it's so important that we understand it, because we're losing it constantly.
But would you explain that? I don't understand.
The
What that
band,
has to do with
they
band
couldn't go to the
uniforms.
Golden Shovel
Mhm.
because they couldn't afford buses. And the whole reason that they have to take buses is because they're forced by government to take buses. Even though Mojave Valley is right there, I'm sure parents would have driven the kids, but we're not allowed to do that
Mhm.
because there's all these regulations on what we can do.
Well, it's more what our insurer tells us we can do.
Exactly.
But it's
Not the
really,
government, it's the insurance.
no, it actually is
The law.
government.
Well,
We're not allowed to do it, right? There is a statute that for travel, for our extracurriculars, you're not allowed to have X number of kids
You're not allowed.
travel on a,
You're not allowed. You're not
in a
allowed to directly.
minivan.
You're not allowed to directly drive the children
to an
in
event and drop them
non-district
off.
because of the state law.
Right.
The size of the vehicle, the reason why we use buses is based on a lawsuit based on a bus collision.
That one is
A
based on our
van.
insurance,
A
but the
van
actual
collision.
traveling and dropping your own kids off with their band uniforms is like literally a
Well,
statute.
I mean, my kid's playing out of town right now. If I wanted to go drive and pick them up, I could do that. I would have to sign a waiver form to do it, but I could do it. If we run into a transportation issue with the band and we can field the entire band the way that we would like to, we may be able to do that with a waiver form to every parent. Now, we're now asking the person in charge of the band to go through all those hoops, but can it be done within the convention of law? Yes. Should it be done that way? That's a discussion.
And it may be in our policy also in the reference. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not aware of the statute. But
I'm pretty
I suspect
sure
it is in our
there's-
policy for sure.
I'm pretty sure it's a statute.
The waiver, if you can do the waiver to get around it, it's a little bit more than policy. You have to do a waiver.
So, I don't know how to deal with, where are we at? Responsible citizen or?
Yes, ma'am.
Responsible citizens, and so under, we have this here, to understand their privileges, liberty, rights, and responsibilities.
Okay,
And we have the definition of rights, responsibilities, and then liberty.
okay.
So the question was this intended to be for us to agree upon as our background information? Or was it intended to be part of a document that was going to supplement the definitions?
It's background information. I'd like some of the definitions in our classrooms, because I think we have a very confused thought process
I'm not
on some of these definitions.
responsible, rights, responsibility. So liberty requires self-government when taking the opportunity to make a choice, to assume responsibility and accept the consequences. Responsible American citizens understand their privilege of liberty, rights, and responsibilities. So that's why I attached all the other stuff, is because responsible American citizens understand their privilege of liberty, rights, and responsibilities. So that's all up for interpretation if it's not documented what it means by the privilege of your liberty, rights, and responsibilities, because people think they have rights that aren't actually rights. So unless you define what those are, there gets to be some confusion. Same with the responsibilities, and frankly, same with liberty, which is highlighted in the definition of freedom and liberty at the top too, because those are so often interchanged as though they mean the same thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's why I included it, so.
So the other option would be, much like we talked about on the mission statement, would be to do a hot link on the liberty, rights, and responsibilities if people wanted to look at the definition of, and link them then to these excerpts.
Does anybody have a problem with what's listed on as definitions under liberty or responsibility or rights, besides what we already changed under rights?
I've got a
Yeah, I
couple
did change
of-
democracy, that was one that I did change. I'm not sure what we changed. I personally think that we should add vote to the responsibilities.
Well, that's actually a privilege, and I don't know that,
No? Okay.
That was on the rights.
I guess participate in your government as well.
yeah.
Here's just an idea, but what if Nicole wrote a paragraph encompassing the important ideas of her important ideas that she wants to include about liberty, and then it was just presented in quotation in italics. It's somewhere in this document, and it stood out by itself, and it said from Nicole Cohen, former school board president, and gave the years that she was on the board, and then that could stay as part of our document for years to come until another board revises all of this. Because, I mean, I think, the concept of liberty is really important. It's just not in the mission statement, but we can't have all of this. It
No,
has
that's
to
what I'm
be-
saying. If you wanted to just, in the mission statement stays the mission statement, and then there's you
Right.
click on a word, it takes you to a definition.
Right.
And then within this definition, if you clicked on one of these words, it would take you to that definition.
Mhm.
And that way you don't have to have all of
Right.
that
Mhm.
printed everywhere.
I think that's a good idea.
So then the question would be, is there concern about these definitions? I wouldn't want to retype this because it's funky
Right.
formatting, we have to do that, but.
I don't have a problem with any of them.
Well, I've got 3 of them underneath arbitrary that concern me.
Where are you looking? Where are you looking
On the Liberty page.
The first one that concerns me, a person cannot value a liberty they do not understand. And then I just think the verbiage should be changed. I think it should say something like an education system must focus on pertinent needs or on pertinent values.
Do we
Wait,
want anything after the
I'm
definition?
sorry, where are you?
I don't understand what you're saying.
He's looking at this sheet,
Okay.
and there's several paragraphs after that. I'm wondering if we don't want to just put the definitions in and ditch the bottom half of the sheet.
That's fine with me. I just, like I said, there's 3 of them here that I would definitely reword.
If we're gonna go down those definitions, I think those that are not highlighted, I think all that's omitted.
I'm not following. How do you-
That's right.
Underneath
Go
arbitrary.
arbitrary and then everything underneath there.
Remove everything underneath arbitrary?
Yeah. I mean, you know, a person cannot value liberty they do not understand by dumbing down our educational system. Seems to me that that's sort of the philosophy of the gal at the bottom. And if we're going to have definitions in there, that's what you have in there. You
Sure.
don't have
Well, I
that
don't have a
personal
problem
statement.
taking that out. I'm not looking
You
to,
know, I would take all
You're
those.
saying take out all of this?
Yeah, all those below there.
That part that I just,
That's my feeling.
I'm in agreement.
Since this is a democracy,
That's
I'll
fine.
Me, you
listen to the
do
rest
3 I
of
don't like.
you.
I said it's worth it to me to get rid of the 3 I don't like.
Okay.
which 3 don't you like?
Back there.
so after that, were other definitions that are different from the ones we just went through? I'm sorry, Mr. Ward, you were talking about these definitions here?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
There were, in this list, there were ones that you wanted reworded?
No,
Yeah.
What we took out.
Okay, what we took out.
I do think that democracy majority rule, no representation from minority groups. That last statement there,
Majority rule?
yeah, you know, if you're going to do something like that, you know, if I was to read that right away, there's no avenue, there's no representation from minority groups. We know minority groups have representation. It just doesn't mean that when the decision is made, in other words, you could even say democracy, decisions are made by the majority. And it sort of clarifies that.
by a simple majority.
Huh?
Decisions are made by a simple
Yeah.
majority.
But I think that the problem by just making it that way is that there has been this movement for so long now, and everybody's referring to our form of government as a democracy, and we're hearing so much about minority rights that if you don't distinguish, democracy means majority rule with no representation for the minority, because once there's a majority rule, that's it. And that's the difference between our republic and democracy. That's why we have a republic. That's why our founders warned us against a democracy. But that's what everybody's referring to us as. I mean, even on faux news, they say democracy. I mean,
Nicole's right, and I think that it's important that we put down decisions made by majority rule at the exclusion of the minorities.
that's fine,
And
however you want to word that.
The reason for that is we have a situation right now in this country we're facing.
Right.
We're looking at them trying to do an electoral college.
Right.
And they don't understand what the
That
ramifications of that would be.
The
The
electoral
ramifications of
college
that would be,
protects
would
the
have nothing
minority
but majority rule.
interests, right. That's why I think it's important that we make some sort of distinction about what that means beyond majority rule. Because to a young kid who has thoughts about, what's right, majority rule seems fine. Let's work towards the majority rule. Let's get there. Not understanding.
If you went by majority rule right now, 4 cities would elect every president of the United States.
That's right.
That's why it's important that we understand.
I think also minority, we're connoting that to ethnic minority, this means
No.
the opinion minority.
Right.
I think when you first read it,
Well,
it's
minority
automatically
states.
connected to it.
Yeah, I don't think of it as ethnically or, in terms of race.
We
I
might think of a different verbiage if we can think of it, but
That's fine if we can come up with another word.
Say not minority, majority, not minority.
How about this? The people without representation make the decisions. That's what a pure democracy is.
People without
You have to put pure democracy, not just democracy.
Well, that's what we're defining. We're defining what democracy is in its purest form.
I don't think that is made clear, because most people don't think that, when they say the word democracy, that we're talking about a pure democracy.
A form of government in which the supreme power is lodged in the hands of the people collectively. That's the 1828 definition.
Say it again.
A form of government in which the supreme power is lodged in the hands of the people collectively.
Could you say no representation for the minority? And then that way you can read into that as being the fewer in number versus a group or.
How about no representation for the minority? Because then it takes away no representation for the minority. That makes it clear that minority could mean a lot of different things.
Correct.
yeah, the other thing you could do, and it's just a thought, is you could change it to no local representation. In other words, the majority makes the decision, and you locally here at Lake have no input.
What we do is we vote people in to be our representation.
Right.
But that's a
Or
republic.
Republican.
That's a republic, not a democracy.
Unless they block us.
Well, I think we need to put pure democracy.
Unlike democracy, no, because we live in a constitutional republic.
Why do you even have to put that there? That the
But
last
what?
part of that sentence.
What?
Democracy, decision made by majority rule. Why do you have to even have that rest of that in there?
Because everybody is referring to us as a democracy. Well, a lot of people. I mean, all over the
No,
world.
I'm saying leave it in, but you don't have to have the last part, no representation of the minority.
But you
There
do,
is.
because a lot of our youngsters think we live in a democracy. And so if they read this definition and say democracy, decisions are made by majority rule, they're like, great, we gotta coalesce the majority. Let's get the majority together so we can change. We need action now. And they need to understand that there's
Could you say?
no representation for the
Could you-
minority.
Could you say, because we have republic right up above it, could we say, unlike a republic, decisions are made by majority rule?
Okay.
Play one off the other to set them off as being two terms that get confused with.
Are we afraid of the word minority? Is that it? Because,
I'm not afraid of the word minority, and I could leave it in there even with that
Okay.
change, but I think I think your point is valid that we do confuse the two different forms of government. And if we're going to confuse them,
I like that.
let's point one against the other. Let's really set them
Well,
apart.
we always hear, or we often hear, not always, but we hear special interest groups. I hear minority groups, and that's not referencing an ethnic group. It's a special interest group, and I think
No,
a lot of people understand that.
and I hope we're not being politically correct.
I hope not either.
Two things.
In doing this.
Can you make that voice says instead of voice?
I mean, I think voices added
And the other thing is,
makes it nice.
to answer Nicole's question, yes, we are. Let's be honest. The word minority has become sensitive, hypersensitive.
You guys have to remember the level of education of our community who will be reading this, and they're going to see the word minority and think you're talking about a minority. They're not going to know what you're talking about.
By putting
that's why
minority
it has to be worded
voices.
correctly, or why it should be taken out for the misrepresentation of what it'll be perceived as.
So I really don't want to challenge you, but when you say the level of education in our community, I'm a high school dropout, so are you talking to me?
You're a minority.
Okay, but you think I don't know what the word means?
No, but you are a minority.
Okay, I'm a minority? Wait, I thought a majority of our city was uneducated. So wouldn't you, the educated, be the minority?
Hey, come on, Nicole.
I'm asking.
You and I know that you're not uneducated.
I'm saying you're a minority of who's a high school dropout who knows what these have
But-
educated herself outside of education.
Okay.
When you look at newspapers and you look at periodicals and magazines, they are, and the internet, they are written at a third grade level in 10 to 12 point type. They are not written for a high level of educational attainment, which wouldn't even get you to a high school diploma. And so when you look at what the average person reads, the average person is not reading very complex thought process things.
Orchids and onions.
Exactly.
I'm going to
So-
go out on a limb and I'm going to say that a lot of educated people are not reading a lot of things too.
I would,
They're reading the same thing the uneducated people are reading, and they're buying into all the lies, so
we live in but we live in a soundbite.
we sure do.
So,
Okay, where are we?
we're still on
Do you like this?
democracy.
No representation of the minority voices?
I do like that.
Yeah.
I would also like to see at the beginning of that, unlike a republic. And I think that really sets those two definitions.
Yeah,
I do
that
too.
clarifies
I
it.
agree. And I'm not upset. I wasn't upset. I'm trying to make the point that
Well, no, I was just trying to help that. I tell my students, sometimes we overanalyze things. And I felt like we were overanalyzing that one statement for a group of people that understand what we're trying to say and what we want, but I'm trying to think of who's going to be reading it. And they're not, the majority of them are not to the level of thinking that way.
We have to know our audience. We teach that in class too.
Right.
Know your audience and who you're writing to.
Yeah.
That was like the first thing. Okay, now what do you want me to write? Now let me get started on it. So we're looking at it from that end.
Gotcha.
Are there any others of these definitions that haven't been turned
Nope, I'm good. Say it again, I'm good. Anybody else? Going once, going twice, moving forward.
So then the last question I would ask, maybe I shouldn't go there. You have responsible citizen. And then what we have is contributing member of society recognize all of the above. So we really don't have a definition
Right.
of contributing member of society here. So do we want to create that? Do we
Isn't
wanna-
that the definition, is a contributing member of the society would recognize all those things? That's what makes you a contributing member.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we
Well,
weren't-
that and you
we
pay
weren't
for
planning on
yourself and
putting all
take care of
these things in
yourself.
there. So these
Go
were all
back to
going to be
occupation,
references
I'm
on
not
a
going.
clip.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Then if they're that
Is it-
close, is it something in the mission statement itself that you can blend together? I don't remember what it says on how. There.
So there were a couple of definitions that were included later in the document from the curriculum committee of contributing member of society.
I didn't like any of them.
I like the one that says, read down knowledge as a member of society, that exercising my absolute freedom may infringe on others' rights, and having the willingness to compromise for the good of all.
Where's that?
It's right here.
Just an observation, this one part right here, I think you probably could do without. Stay vigilant for any malfeasance and infractions of their oaths of office committed by public officials at all levels of government. I mean, if you want to put it in there, fine, but it just,
Well, these came from the curriculum committee. These didn't come from.
Right, these are not, where I was going down to was way down toward the last page. It says contributing member of society.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to go back up here, these were the ones that were
I-
provided as definitions of
So if I can,
responsible citizens.
If I can be devil's advocate for a minute. When we talk about scholarship, character, and humanity, and then we come down and we say that we want our students to graduate with academic and social skills. We drop down further, we set the end goal of all of that above, and that is to be responsible citizens and contributing members of society. Is it really something we need to frame if we're doing everything that leads up to that correctly?
I don't think so.
Wait, say that last sentence? That your
Is it
question?
something we need to frame if we're doing everything that leads up to them
So in the
graduating
statement,
correctly?
do we need to define contributing member? Is that what you're saying?
Do we need to define contributing member?
Okay. Responsible contributing member,
I don't,
responsible contributing citizen. And just combine
Well,
them.
That's what I
responsible
did.
citizens
why
already do that,
just to go?
Right.
I think is what you're saying.
Why can't?
Right. If we're doing our job, if we're following our mission statement
Yeah.
as a district, if we're doing all of these things, do we really have to set where the end zone is, or will that just happen?
I think there's a difference between being a citizen and being a contributing member, because you can do all the things that we have in there, but being a contributing member to your society beyond paying taxes and not being a drag on society if you don't have to be, means that there are some things, and you are involved in your community, you are
But that
beyond
goes
politics.
That goes to responsible citizens.
And humanity.
But he's saying
John,
you really
you're
have
saying
to
the
word
whole
that.
phrase at the end, the whole prepositional phrase, to become. You're saying that maybe that piece isn't necessary, that you should just stop
I'm
at
going
social.
I'm going after Ann. I don't see the need to
Oh, okay.
define contributing member.
I
Okay.
don't either.
Well, but to be a responsible
you.
citizen, I don't get in trouble, I'm responsible.
And
to
because you
con-
don't get in trouble, you contribute to society because you're not
See, I don't
taking and
believe
draining
that that's me
resources.
contributing to society. Me being responsible
Is
not
doing the
being
bare
in trouble.
minimum
I
of
think
the
John's-
expectation, right?
John's point is that the phrase contributing member of society is, you know what that is. Do you really need us to come up with a definition of it?
Well,
I know
actually,
what it is.
That's what I mean.
actually no, because everybody's definition based on where they're at within everything that leads up to contributing is going to be based on what they've learned. And if they're engaged in class at 60 to 70%, they should have enough to come out the other end with what I think we all think our thought process is on contributing member.
Couldn't you put them together with a,
Hey, that was my idea.
oh, sorry.
It's too late. We
That's
voted
right.
on
Where
this.
my
The mission
brain-
statement is
Oh,
written.
you voted on
It's
it,
done.
okay. I'm
A
sorry.
year ago, you could have said that.
Yeah.
Well, my brain wasn't as educated
If
as that.
nothing else, if nothing else, John,
I have paper tonight.
if nothing else under contributing member, you could simply put a statement that says, anyone who adheres to the previous whatever
Yes.
is a contributing, will be expected to be a contributing member of society.
So what we've actually done though is we've listed the rights, liberty and responsibilities that are going to be linkable. And then that final statement was contributing members of society recognize all of the above. Well, we want to just, for responsible citizens, say contributing members of society recognize responsibility of citizenship.
Why can't you have responsible and contributing members?
Because we voted on our mission statement last year.
So you wanna basically
Oh.
go
Part of it's our mission statement. We're just trying to define the terms in it.
Okay, I got it.
But I think they just found out an easy way to do that.
What is it?
We're talking about within,
Oh. Okay,
responsible means contributing means responsible.
okay, that sounds good. Don't confuse people.
Too late. Too late.
We've all read that.
Responsibility of citizenship. Is that what we're saying right here?
Yep.
Recognize the responsibility of citizenship.
What about contributing members of
Yeah,
society
I-
also recognize?
Well, maybe contributing members say recognize the responsibility of citizenship, and then maybe something on humanity, because if you're a contributing member of society, in my opinion, you're being more than just a tax-paying, law-abiding citizen.
Oh, that's right.
You're
So maybe
actually
this is
contributing
back to-
more. Huh?
Maybe this is back to the original statement then. Maybe we say contributing members of society recognize all of the above.
All of the above.
Is
That would
your
be fine
definition?
with me.
Me too.
Perfect.
I don't know if it's perfect. but
All right.
it's
We'll format this a little better then. That work?
Maybe contributing members of society recognize all of the above with a special emphasis on humanity.
No.
Oh, boy.
Sorry.
Can I make an observation, and if you want to, just tell me to shut up? I'm giving you an opportunity now.
You want us to use that word?
Do I need to
You
sit
can
down?
use that word.
Do I need to sit down?
I think all these things we've been doing, we've forgotten the basic rule, KISS. You know, you can get so enamored with what you're writing that you believe you've just written the greatest missive in the world. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have an impact on people who read it.
You're assuming people will read it.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming somebody will read it.
I do not want to
But
mention.
you understand my point. And that's when we first came up with the mission statement, I was talking about how it was so verbose. We write beautiful things. That doesn't mean that they're to the point, succinct, and will make an impact.
Who's going to read this? If we ever have a committee, and we ever want to redefine something, they're going to look back at the mission statement, they'll pull this out, hopefully, and they'll look at it. And they'll agree with it or they won't, they'll make a judgment call on it. But it's a good exercise to go through because it does give us a sense of what we stand for as a district.
I'll cut and paste it to the top of my emails.
I'll be so happy if I see you do that.
And then everyone has to figure out what I'm emailing them for. Mike's like, don't ever email me again.
Start with the bullet points, okay?
So here's what I'd like to do. To clean all of this up, actually list our PBIS traits here, and then kind of show it as what it would look like as a hot link. So when you click on, it's just the mission statement. You click on scholarship pops up. I don't know how to do that, but we'll figure it out. And then if everybody agrees with that, that would be what we have. And you can do this now via email. So this brings us to the scholarship definition, character definition. We'll add that in. Humanity, responsible citizen, and then contributing member of society. So that's our
Can we do maybe one last thought? Contributing members of society recognize all of the above, period, and then can we end it, e pluribus unum, please?
Sure. Let's do it.
Could you agree with that simply because you...
Just 'cause you wanna shut me up?
Short?
No,
Is that in quotes on
that's
the- and
a
that
good
one?
idea. I mean, let's,
I'm sorry?
Was that in quotes on the sheet?
I think
Or just in italics?
I think
Just-
it's italic.
No, it wasn't in italics either, was
No.
it? It was at the end of
It's not missing.
a paragraph.
it's in the end of a paragraph, something like that.
I'll go back and look at it.
We could do identities fortuna igual.
please tell us what that means.
Fortune favors the bold.
What is it?
But in Latin, huh?
Yes. Identities fortuna igual. Fortune favors the bold.
Oh.
And you could probably come up with some more of those too.
It's on my profile.
Just for fun, I'm going to go back and look up that one that he was asking earlier about education being the greatest force. If I remember right, that's a quote from Socrates.
It probably is.
I'm not positive. I've seen two quotes from Socrates and Plato in here, so I suspect that's what it is.
Good?
I think so.
All right, and that was only the first item on the agenda.
Same time. And I think, is that up there, Joe, the other? Yeah, no.
Is this going to come to the board, or is this just going to be incorporated? Are we going to vote on it?
I think putting it back together, bringing it back to the board for a vote is nice.
Okay.
That's it.
No.
Two more
We have two more items. Strapping, Pat. We'll get there with strapping.
We're moving. This isn't that long.
I'm sorry, I don't see how you, oh, this one? Yeah, okay. Gotcha. I do an arrow.
Oh, I see.
I believe that these were sent out to you, is that correct?
Yes.
They were.
Mr. Madsen, I'm going to let you take over, and I'm going to be here if you want me to do anything on the computer.
I didn't see those.
I sent it out quite a while ago.
Oopsie. I mean, I printed CBI-E, but it wasn't this. It was the actual policy. It wasn't
Well, but this is Scottsdale CBIE.
These were examples of other ones.
Well, I printed whatever was on the agenda, which was the policy, not form.
Well, and the thought process behind this is we didn't like the evaluation tool.
Right.
And so we need to be changing the evaluation tool. Got it?
I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay. We need to change the evaluation tool and how we're going to evaluate the superintendent before next fiscal year starts.
Right.
Because if we're going to evaluate the superintendent, we need to evaluate based on criteria that was established prior to the year starting.
Okay.
It wouldn't be fair to take a look back in a year, not have a have a solid criteria for the entire year.
Well, I think there was things when we did the evaluation that just didn't apply. I mean, I thought it was more of a cross off, not an add to.
Well, but we didn't like the rubric.
Well, no.
Excuse me, I hope that doesn't go off again. My wife was in the hospital last night, and I don't know what it's all about. If it goes off again, please excuse me.
This may be one of those things where we get a couple of people from the governing board together and go through this before we actually bring something, have a final proposal before we do it.
I just misunderstood. And I don't doubt that Terry sent it to me at all. But I just printed the policy when I saw it on the agenda, so I didn't even realize this is what we were doing in this work session today. Sorry.
But I think we want to attack this in a way that we can have it hopefully by May or June's board meeting, so it's in place for the next year.
I think there's two of these. I don't know if I mentioned which two they were to you, did I, Terry?
This one right here, those are the two that I sent out.
Okay.
And
This one had a different system.
That's got a 5-point evaluation on it.
Yeah,
And
and
I like
that's-
5 better
The
than.
5-point evaluation, I think, is critical with your neutral evaluation in the middle, just for statistical analysis purposes. I don't know if we'll ever do something like that, but it just makes it cleaner.
Well, and I think what we want to do is we want to look at the questions, and then, you know, are they doing a good job? Do they need a lot of improvement? Are they doing an outstanding job? And they have a 5-point spread on something like that. And my thought process is where we need to go with it. But going question by question, and Nicole, I think, would like some time to review this. I think maybe you get two people together and hammer it out and bring a final product.
Yeah, I think what we ought to do is take the two or whatever, and each of us go through it and just mark the ones you don't approve of.
Right.
And when we come in here, we may find out we only have 2 of them we don't approve of, and it's over with and done. If we go question by question, we'll be here for 4 hours.
Well, and we
really
could-
agree on a lot of them.
We're probably 10 days away from our next work session. Is this something we want to incorporate in the next work session?
Sure.
I can do it.
Okay.
So Terry, if you'll send the 2 final ones back out, we'll go through them and we'll be prepared for the next work session. We can have it as an also ran through the front and the back end of that one.
Item number 3, Mrs. Cox had requested that we place an item on the agenda for discussion, and I'm going to ask her to.
Hopefully this will be brief. When I became the high school principal, I became quickly aware that high school students know how to do a fire drill. By the time they've gone from kindergarten to 8th grade, they've practiced a minimum of 81 fire drills. And of course, this being a time of school shootings and a necessity to practice other types of safety drills, the shelter in place, an evacuation, and a lockdown. And the necessity now to do 2 of each of those 3 that I just mentioned during the school year, plus trying to do 9 or more fire drills really takes a lot of time to do, and it takes time away from the classroom. The most time-consuming part of a fire drill is not evacuating the students. At the high school level, they understand that they need to get out of the building. The most time-consuming part is accounting for all of those students once they have evacuated the building. And they could be anywhere. They could have gone to the library, the nurse, the office, whatever. And accounting, of course, for staff members in case there was a fire, to know that someone is not there and that we need to search for them. So I had an opportunity to talk to the fire chief. Something I'd always wanted to do is say, couldn't this be resolved in a different way? Would take changing the state statute regarding fire drills. But it was even the fireman who told me some years ago at the high school, you know, you don't really need all of these fire drills with the sprinkler system. The chance that you're going to actually have a fire break out and not get extinguished is quite remote. And I said, well, couldn't we use some of these drills, the time for some of these fire drills, for some of the other drills that we had to do? And they thought it was a good idea, but it was something I never acted on. I mean, getting a law changed is really something. But I went down and visited with the fire chief, and he said exactly, he agreed with me. And we talked about the possibility, if we could get the statute changed, of course, for the state, that it would just say, he thought, a minimum of, at the high school level, with high schools that have sprinkler systems, that having a minimum of 3 fire drills would be enough at the high school level, and then we could use the other 6 drills and apply them toward the time towards some of the other to practice. And he said that the way that he would do this, he would start with his fire marshal and discuss it. Then he would talk to the fire chiefs of Mojave County, and then if they thought this was a good idea, that he would then take it before the lobbying group for the firemen in Phoenix, and if they thought it would be something that they would recommend, and then the next thing would be to have one of our, maybe Senator Borelli or one of our other representatives to submit it as a bill. Of course, this isn't anything that's going to be done by this fall. But both agreed that the bill would give flexibility to each individual school. At any individual high school that wanted to have 9 fire drills, they would have perfect flexibility to do that. But for schools that did not feel the need to have that many, and Jamie told me that actually they have 10 or 11 fire drills at our high school. But then, if Scott and Jamie decided they didn't need to have 9 fire drills, then they could use the new law and save time and have better practices. So anyway, having gone through that, that's something I brought up with the fire chief, and he said if we wanted to pursue it, he would suggest that a letter came from the board or the superintendent and or the board and superintendent to pursue it. And of course, it might not get any farther than Mojave County Fire Chiefs. It might not get any farther than the lobbying group. I understand that. But it's something that I'm always about saving time in schools and saving time for things that are really, really important. And these safety drills, the likelihood, and the chief said it, the likelihood might be then we're going to have a fire at Lake Havasu High School. Just in this day and time with sprinkler systems, it's very unlikely, but it's an he didn't say it's an archaic law. It was the firemen from the time I was at the high school that said it's an archaic law, and it really does need to be changed. So that's why I brought that up. And I wrote, I don't need for you to go over this today, but because this is my idea, and I don't like to put my work off on other people, I wrote a draft of a letter that could either be signed by Diana or by John, and that goes through the background to the fire chief for him to take with him to say that this is something that we were requesting that he do. And
Have you given everyone a copy of the letter?
No, I didn't know if you guys wanted to go over it tonight. Are you reading something else? I don't want you to something too tedious,
No, I'm just wondering why we would go through all those steps. If, in fact, the fire chief thinks it's a good idea, why wouldn't we just contact our senator and ask him to move forward?
Well, I feel that myself, this is, this is on, he knows how to affect change in the law when it pertains to fire, of emergencies and fires. Obviously, he was just came out very knowledgeable. This is how we would want to go about doing it. And I'm just honoring what he said, that's all.
I think it's admirable that you did all this, but I think it now lays in Diana's hands. You've advised her, now she needs to get with her staff and decide if they think that this is adequate or if this is appropriate.
Oh, of course,
Because they may decide they want to hold 7 drills, and I think that's more in her bailiwick than ours.
Right, but the law would have to be changed. She could not change that on her own.
Right.
The law requires us to have 9 fire drills every year.
Nor would I feel comfortable going and advocating for that unless the whole board has discussed it. I mean, Mrs. Cox presented that to me, that, this is the responsibility of the board to say, Superintendent, we want you to pursue this, essentially.
Right.
It's an administrative function. If you feel it'll benefit you and the administration of the district, then it's your option.
This actually falls almost directly to Aggie's park on safety. And I think that if she feels it's necessary, coming up the chain of command to the administration, I think that you have the ability to initiate a letter. If you would like it to come with the full weight of the board behind it, I'm sure we would be happy to vote on it. I see the point.
I think that's a good plan. And I thought Aggie was going to be here, and I was going to apologize to her. I just should have gone to Aggie and discussed this with her, and for some reason it skipped my brain. But I think that would be a good way to go about it.
But I see the point, and I think that what we need to do is we need to find the right path to initiate this. If it's through the fire chief and a letter, then we need to accomplish that. If we can call Senator Borelli and say, "Hey, man, what's going on?" We need to go that way with it. But I think we should be looking at ways that we can improve school security as a whole. And by the time you're at high school, even though you're 1.7 times more likely to be struck by a lightning than you are to be involved in a school shooting, I think that given the current political climate, it may not be a bad idea to free up some of this time for lockdown drills. And if they have to change the law and make it statewide, then let's try it.
And we currently are doing those in addition to.
Right.
So we're doing all of these
We're
drills.
doing all of it, but it takes so much more time.
I haven't been there when they have a fire drill, so I really am sort of behind the power curve here. But I did want to mention, just something you could discuss in one of your meetings. We were having the same problem she just mentioned, getting the kids rolled, getting them who's where, who's when, who's why. And I sat down, I made myself a clipboard, painted it red and put the number of my room on it. And all the kids knew in a fire drill they had to go to this room, or they had to go to that room, or they had to go to the room they were in, or whatever. And each of the teachers did the same thing in different colors. And we would simply hold them up like this, and a kid coming out of the cafeteria or coming out of someplace would see our color, come straight to us and report in, right? And we could hold a fire drill and have all the students counted in 10 minutes. I mean, just boom.
Do you have 2,000 kids?
We had as many as you got here.
You do?
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
But each one of them knew that if I'm in biology, I have to go to the biology room, and that teacher would have that number held up, and they'd go straight to them.
Okay. We have a different procedure at the high school, but we do have signs, and the main thing is the two-way radios that people have that they can use. My student did not come here to my room, to the designated spot, and then all the other department heads can hear that on the two-way radio, and they say, "I've got him here," and they know to listen for that. It's just part of the procedure.
Okay.
So it happens really quickly.
And I do want to say, Mrs. Conchar, you were going to make a comment.
I was just going to say we should be cognizant that the legislators now have caps on their bills, so it's too late, obviously, for this session,
Oh,
but
yeah.
if this is something that we want to move on, we want to move on it as quickly as possible because they can only submit so many bills now.
Interesting.
And I would like to say that I understand this better than the first time you talked with me, and this is very helpful seeing it laid out in writing.
And if we go that way, Phil, you will not hurt my feelings if you change anything, and if you want the draft, I can send it in PDF form to Terry, and whatever you want to do with it. It's subject to any changes. But anyway, it's something that's been on my mind for a long time.
Good, thank you. By the way, if you haven't been up to the high school lately, security has been improved.
What's there to say?
You will be challenged repetitively, is what I've been told. One of the people in Pastors and Campus went, wow. Because they were asked, who are you, why are you here? More than once, so it was good. Anything else on drills?
That
Okay.
went fast, quickly. I told you I wanted it to, and I hope it did.
Okay, good stuff. All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ellen Ward,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
No.
Pat Rooney,
Yeah.
John Mesden.
I'll vote no too, just to make it interesting.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Nicole will be